So Sushant, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So your claim to fame is that you bring actionable context, as you call it,
Yes.
to medical data. So tell us what it means. What does actionable context mean?
Yeah, so maybe let's start with what's happening today. It's very similar to other industries. There's a deluge of data, but what do you do about it? So this is also true in healthcare. So whether it's a wearable, it's a Fitbit that you go bring to your doctor, or a medical device, all that is generating data and at a rapid rate. But what needs to happen is that data needs to be made actionable. And actionable in healthcare means, well, what is the state of the patient? Are they at risk for diabetes, for heart condition? Are they going to be in the ER next week? And it also means what needs to be done about this. So that's what we provide. We provide actionable clinical context for any healthcare data. And so what I believe needs to happen is that every stakeholder in the healthcare ecosystem needs to have context, clinical context, to be able to make decisions and to be able to provide better care for individuals.
Brilliant, very fascinating. One of the things that I know about your company is your other co-founder or co-founding partner, Dr. Rajesh.
Yes.
Right? He's an expert doctor, I know, in cardiovascular diseases in particular. So the question that I have for you is, you are a data scientist, you're an engineer, you're an expert in your field. You've got Dr. Rajesh, who's an expert in treating cardiovascular diseases. How are you combining your skills and capabilities to address this very, very serious issue that is afflicting millions of people around the world?
Christian, that's a great question. So first of all, in the beginning, I didn't understand him. And I think it often happens, you have a domain expert, someone in healthcare in this case, and I have some experience in the building of tools for this, and often it goes like this, right? It took a lot of work in the beginning to make it work, but I think if you do, the domain expert knows where the problems are and has an intuition of how to solve those problems and how to get there. And then if you combine that with the tools to solve the problem, I think it can really be good. So Dr. Rajesh, he's actually one of the best doctors I've seen. He has an MD, PhD, so he both is a practicing physician, cardiologist, and also he's a professor at Stanford, so he also is in the cutting edge of medical science and what needs to be done. And really, the HealthPals came from his experience, his 15 years of research experience and more as a doctor, and in preventative medicine. So he started a clinic called Sati, which if in South Asian languages means friend or partner. And the idea is to target a high-risk population, South Asians, and to be able to find out who is at risk, what is their problem, and how do you treat them. Now this is at Stanford, so we do have clinical results that show superior results, but it's Stanford, so you have a whole bunch of resources to throw at it. You have nutritionists, dietitians to throw at the problem, but how do you scale this beyond Stanford to every patient, individual, and clinician in the world?
It's cool. I'm glad you mentioned the word patient, because one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, obviously doctors are dealing with a lot of different data, and they have to sort through it. So how do you help doctors make intelligent decisions for me, the patient, by sorting through the data and making the best decisions for me?
Great question. So what we do is we start at the population level. So to the administrator or the medical director of a hospital or an employer, we provide information on who is at risk in a prioritized way and what needs to be done about them. And that's at a very high level, at an administrative level. Then they can drill down, and a clinician can drill down, when they're in the room with the patient at the point of care, or where they're making decisions about a patient, of given the patient chart and other information like wearable data and other data, what needs to be done. So how do we do that? We use guidelines and best practices. This is what doctors are trained on in med school, to look at guidelines and best practices, but today they use intuition and their experience. But we say, here's the guidelines and best practices that you should follow, and where machine learning comes in is we help prioritize which one is most relevant in this context.
Brilliant, fascinating stuff. You know what the final question is?
Yeah,
what's the message to the team?
So I'll break it up into a non-shameless portion and then a shameless portion.
Good.
So I really think, and part of the reason I got into healthcare was because it really is one of the biggest societal issues that I think we've solved. Just last week, the Bill and Melinda Gates released a letter where they talked about how poverty and disease are the two biggest problems we have to solve if we need to solve human misery. In solving disease, you have to manage the disease, you have to find ways to cure the disease, make it reversible like type 2 diabetes, but you also need to find ways to prevent it. So I believe, along with people like Anjali and others, we're pioneering preventative medicine. And if you're in healthcare, love to talk. This is the same shameless portion. And then if we're a startup, we're VC backed, but we really want to take this to the next level, love to work with partners, and that's either channel partners or strategic partners who would love to invest in us. So.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sushant.